Dr. Ricky Byers Beckwith and the Agape International Choir, Pour Yourself in Me. And we mentioned, I want you to go through this process of being and feeling the Spirit of God vibrating at the level of the Spirit of God, and embodying that which you are feeding upon. And what are you to feed upon? What is to be your mental diet? You remember the text says, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Pull your mind away from the things of this world. Ask Spirit to pour itself in you. Because as a person thinks in their heart, that's who that individual is. As a man think it, as a woman think it, in their heart, in his heart, in her heart, so is she, so is he. And so Neville says, if I could now single out the kind of mental food I want to express within my world and feast upon it, then I would become it. And he goes through and he talks about his experience. The next experience that he shares is one that happened to him. And he was an individual who had been on Broadway and been in the theater. He was acting, and then one day an individual named Abdullah came into his life, and he began to teach him. And he had been on Broadway in the theater for a period of time. And he says in 1933 he was in New York City. And his friend Abdullah, with whom he had studied Hebrew for 5 years, was really the beginning of the eating of all my superstitions. When I went to him, I was filled with superstitions. I could not eat meat. I could not eat fish. I could not eat chicken. I could not eat any of these things that were living in the world. I did not drink. I did not smoke. I was making a tremendous effort to live a celibate life, Neville says. Abdullah said to me, I am not going to tell you you are crazy, Neville, but you are, you know. All these things are stupid, but I could not believe, Neville says, that they were stupid. In November 1933, he says, I bade goodbye to my parents in the city of New York as they sailed for Barbados, which was his home. He says, I had not been in this country for 12 years, and he had no desire to see Barbados. I was not successful, and I was ashamed to go home to successful members of my family. After 12 years in America, he says, I was a failure in my own eyes. I was in the theater and made money 1 year and spent it in the next month. I was not what I would call by their standards, nor by mine, a successful person. Mind you that when I said goodbye to my parents, he says, in November, I had no desire to go to Barbados. The ship pulled out, and as I came up the street, something possessed me with a desire to go to Barbados. It was the year 1933. It says I was unemployed and had no place to go except a little room on 75th Street. He says I went straight to my old friend Abdullah and said to him, Ab, the strangest feeling is possessing me. For the first time in 12 years, I want to go to Barbados. Abdullah says, Do you want to go, Neville? You have gone. This was very strange language to Neville at the time. He says, I was in New York on 72nd Street, and he tells me I have gone to Barbados. So Neville says, I said to him, what do you mean I have gone, Abdullah? Abdullah said, do you really want to go? And Neville says, yes. He then said to me, as you walk through this door now, you are not walking on 72nd Street. You are walking on palm-lined streets, coconut-lined streets. This is Barbados. Do not ask me how you're going to go. You are in Barbados. You do not say how when you are there. You are there. Now walk as though you were there. And so he says, I went out of his place in a daze. I am in Barbados. I have no money, I have no job, I am not even well clothed, and yet I am in Barbados. He says, Abdullah was not the kind of person with whom you would argue, not Abdullah. 2 weeks later, I was no nearer my goal than on the day I first told him I wanted to go to Barbados. I said to him, Ab, I trust you implicitly, but here is one thing I cannot see how it is going to work. I have not one penny toward my journey. And he says, I began to explain. You know what Abdullah did, he says? He was as black as the ace of spades, my old friend Abdullah, with his turban head. So he's a black man talking to Neville. And he says, as I sat in his living room, he rose from his chair and went toward his study and slammed the door, which was an invitation not to follow him. As he went through the door, he said to me, I have said all that I have to say. So he's not arguing. He just closed the door. And on the 3rd of December, I stood before Abdullah and told him again I was no nearer my trip. He repeated his statements, you are in Barbados. The last ship sailing for Barbados would take me there for the reason I wanted to go, which was to be for Christmas, and it sailed at noon on December the 6th, which would be 3 days later. On the morning of December the 4th, having no job, having no place to go, I slept late, Neville says. When I got up, there was an airmail letter from Barbados under my door. As I opened the letter, a little piece of paper flickered to the floor. I picked it up, and it was a draft for $50. The letter was from my brother Victor, and it read, I am not asking you to come, Neville. This is a command. We have never had a Christmas when all the members of our family were present at the same time. This Christmas, it could be done if you would come. My oldest brother Cecil left home before the youngest was born, and then we started to move away from home at different times, so never in the history of our family were we all together at the same time. The letter continued, you're not working. I know there's no reason why you cannot come, so you must be here for Christmas. The enclosed $50 is to buy a few shirts or a pair of shoes you may need for the trip. You will not need tips. Use the bar if you are drinking. I will meet the ship and pay all of your tips and your incurred expenses. I have called the place. I have made arrangements with Furnace, With and Company in New York City and told them to issue you a ticket when you appear at their office. The $50 is simply to buy some little essentials. You may sign as you want aboard the ship. I will meet it and take care of all the obligations. This is what's in the letter. He said he went down to Furnace, With and Company with my letter and let them read it. They said, we received the cable, Mr. Goddard, but unfortunately we have not any space left on the December 6th sailing. The only thing available is third class between New York and St. Thomas. When we get to St. Thomas, we have a few passengers who are getting off. You may then ride first class from St. Thomas to Barbados. But between New York and St. Thomas, you must go third class, although you may have the privileges of the first class dining room and walk the decks of the first class. Neville says, I'll take it. I went back to my friend Abdullah, he says, on the afternoon of December the 4th and said it worked like a dream. I told him what I had done, thinking he would be happy. Do you know what Abdullah said? Who told you you are going third class? Did I see you in Barbados? The man you are, going third class? You are in Barbados, and you went there first class. You went there. You already went there, Abdullah says. I did not have one moment to see him again before I sailed on December the 6th. When I reached the dock with my passport and my papers to get aboard that ship, the agent said to me, we have good news for you, Mr. Goddard. There has been a cancellation, and you are going first class. You're going first class. Abdullah taught me the importance, Neville says, of remaining faithful to an idea and not compromising. I wavered, but he remained faithful to the assumption that I was in Barbados and had traveled first class. I believe what Neville Goddard teaches. That's why I'm teaching it to you. I'm seeing it worked out. I've seen it. But now I'm taking a scientific approach, a step-by-step approach to this teaching. I, too, was introduced to it so many years ago. And as I'm teaching it now, it's becoming clear and clear to me. I see you making your elsewhere here, your then now.